What's up, bros? I'm Mike Muhammad, and I want to give my perspective here on the whole AMD reveal of Big Navi, the Radeon 6000 series. And I want to give a perspective from a perspective that I don't feel like a lot of people are hearing right now. And my perspective is, I'm somebody who bought an RTX 3090. So basically, what I'm seeing now on the internet is people going off, sounding off, and you know how people do when these things happen, and they're going off about, oh, the RTX 3090 is fucking buried now. Holy fuck, imagine paying 500 extra US dollars in for a card that can basically do the same thing as AMD's Big Navi card. And pretty much I'm just seeing like the a lot of memes and whatnot people are saying now about you know, oh, Nvidia got completely destroyed. AMD is like the hero we deserve. Da 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 da. Okay, I want everybody to just cool the brakes for a minute and actually just like, I just want to put in my perspective. This is the perspective of somebody who did the work and put down the money to get an RTX 3090, and I did it knowing exactly what I wanted out of the card, and I've gotten exactly what I wanted out of the card. And what I wanted out of the card was to be able to run games on this thing at 4K 120 FPS with ray tracing, which sounds like a lofty goal for someone. And I just want everybody to like understand, bros, it's not like you all of a sudden now you completely give up on the Ampere series if you're making a decision in terms of which GPU to buy. It would be nice if the logistics could be straightened out, but that's a whole different fucking discussion, really. Um, Basically, if you are someone who's looking into buying one of these graphics cards, what I would suggest is to ask yourself one question. And that question is, how much does 4K gaming at high frame rates with ray tracing matter to you? I think the big elephant in the room that people are ignoring in this discussion is DLSS. I want to talk about specifically the way AMD revealed their card and the way that Nvidia revealed their card. And again, I know people have their opinions about this stuff. Everybody can sound off however they want to sound off in the comments. And let me know what you think, what your perspective is. If you just want to shit post, go for it. I don't care. Um, just leave a like in the video below. Anyways, I think I think what you've got to ask yourself is, how much does high frame rate gaming at 4K with ray tracing matter to you? All right, so show of hands, everybody. How many of you guys here have a display that either has direct port or HDMI 2.1, the most recent version of HDMI, with a display that can output at 4K 120 hertz? Show of hands. See, I'm going to go out on a whim and guess very few of you put up your hands. And again, to repeat what I said, a 4K high refresh rate display, either 120 hertz or 144 hertz. I don't think I said 144 hertz the first time. A 4K high refresh rate display with either direct port or HDMI 2.1 connection ports, the most recent version of HDMI. And I believe the most likely answer is that very, very, very few people that were watching this video actually put their hands up. I'm going to assume a lot of people are still like running like a 40p high refresh rate monitor. Maybe you just got a 4K 60 hertz monitor. Maybe you're still running like a 1080p monitor. Maybe you're that one guy still playing games with 1080p 60 frames per second on PC. Yeah, if you're that guy, you have absolutely no need for one of these Ampere cards, by the way. I would suggest the cheapest AMD card for you. Yeah, man, like you really got to ask yourself, what kind of rig do I have here? What kind of display do I have here? Because here's the thing with DLSS 2.0, the most recent version of DLSS that is now implemented into these Ampere cards that sadly not too many people have been able to get their hands on. The thing about DLSS or sorry, excuse me, DLSS 2.1 or 2.0, is that really what it can do in this incarnation is if you use, say, DLSS quality, it will essentially run the game as if you weren't rendering at 4K. It'll run the game as if you were rendering at 1440p, but it will look like near exactly like what 4K is going to look like with the same performance speed of rendering the game at 1440p, maybe slightly less, but very similar in frame rate to what it would have been if you were rendering at 1440p. And that's just quality mode. There's also performance DLSS. There's also ultra performance DLSS, which is mainly recommended if you were playing a game at 8K. So, yeah, like, I don't think people are fully understanding that when it comes to like 4K gaming at high refresh rates with ray tracing and stuff, this is the thing. This RTX 3090, I've got it installed on my PC, but I'm just showing the box. This card is so goddamn powerful at running certain games at 4K and high refresh rates. Doom Eternal is running at like 4K, whatever it's running at, like fucking 144, close to 144 FPS. It's running Doom Eternal. And that's just natively rendered, no dynamic scaling of any kind. I think people are having a misconception. When they hear DLSS, they just... I'm saying the S way too many times. When they hear about it, they think to themselves of the console ways of doing 4K, like the PS4 Pro where it does that checkerboarding. They're thinking too much of like just upscaling like their TV upscales. Just turning 1 pixel into 4 pixels so you can upscale 1080p to 4K. People are not really comprehending what DLSS in its current incarnation is. And I've heard a lot about the first DLSS 1.1 was not, or 1.0 was not that great, and it needed some work. Well, whatever they did, man, they put in the work, because I'm impressed by DLSS 2.0. Something like Ghost Runner with ray tracing enabled on the max settings with DLSS quality is running like rock solid 4K 120 FPS on the LG OLED TV I have. A more demanding game, like say Control or Watch Dogs Legion, which involve more heavy-duty use of ray tracing, I want to say, those games, the performance tanks much more significantly, like to the point where it starts to get below 30 FPS if you're rendering at 4K, even on this RTX 3090, which is like... Basically what I'm saying is once ray tracing gets involved, the performance hits a lot. These games could probably run close to 4K 120 FPS if you turn the RTX off. If you turn the RTX off, then it runs very well. And that's kind of what AMD has done here. AMD has focused so much on rasterization, and we haven't heard really anything about their ray tracing performance or what their super sampling technology is going to be like. And what it is now is that we know Ampere, yes, there is a performance drop with ray tracing, but it's not so bad like it was with the Turing series when RTX first was introduced. It's definitely improved, and with DLSS, 1440p games, if you're rendering games at 1440p, most of them will, even with ray tracing on an RTX 3090, still be 144 FPS, which was something that was definitely not possible with the Turing line of graphics cards. And what that means is DLSS now basically uses all these AI cores that are in the graphics card. I want to see here if the box even... 3rd generation tensor cores, it says. It didn't say how many tensor cores are in the 3090. I'm sure you can find that on a Nvidia site if you want to look that up. It's like a lot of goddamn tensor cores and ray tracing cores they shoved into this thing. It is one of the biggest graphics cards on the market. It's huge, and yeah, they put... And Jensen Huang, when he presented the Ampere series, took the time to explain to people Look, we put a lot of work into the AI cores, we put a lot of work into the ray tracing cores. The ray tracing is going to work much better. The AI is going to work much better when you're using technology such as DLSS. It's friggin' sick how well this thing works, man. How much you can just for those games that are super demanding in terms of ray tracing, that really tank performance, like Control and Watch Dogs Legion, those games drop the FPS between like 20, 30 FPS when you put the ray tracing on. Like the performance hits that heavy. When you put on DLSS, you can get these games to run much closer to 60 FPS or above 60 FPS. Modern Warfare, I wish it had DLSS, because with ray tracing, the frame rate drops down to like 80 FPS, whereas at 4K, I could just basically run the game at 120 FPS rock solid for most of the part. So, yeah, like the main thing to think here is, do you care that much about ray tracing? And I'm going to say this again. I have the fucking RTX 3090, so you know, like, I'm invested in the Ampere platform, and I'd like it if it succeeded. I'm going to say, as that guy, if you don't care that much, okay, first and foremost, if you don't have a 4K high refresh rate display that you can connect to this graphics card, uh, some 4K 120 hertz TVs will not connect with this graphics card because they don't have HDMI 2.1 ports. So you got to make sure that if you don't have a 4K high refresh rate display, get a Radeon 6000 card. Just flat out, just get a Radeon 6000 card. You do not need to worry if that's not a big interest of yours, running games at 4K and high refresh rates. If you do not care about ray tracing that much, even though I'll tell you right now, it makes games look fucking incredible. If you do not care that much about it and you're just going to run games without ray tracing, and I'm assuming you're going to wait till like generations later in GPUs where ray tracing is, a much better thing, like where it's like anti-aliasing, where like the technology is mastered ray tracing now, and we're not getting that heavy of a performance hit at all. If you're one of those people who just wants to wait for the ray tracing technology to get better for way further down the line, then yeah, get a Radeon 6000 card. But if you're one of those people who's like me and you want to play games in 4K at high refresh rate rates, 120 hertz, 144 hertz, in 4K, and you want to have that ray tracing, you want to have the cream, you want to have the cherry on top, and you want it to run fast as well with DLSS. And guys, like, I'm here, I've heard so many people talk shit about super sampling and DLSS, having never tried it on one of these Ampere cards, because again, unfortunately, Nvidia did fuck up the logistics and not that many people have been able to get their hands on these cards. And I've heard from people so much trash talk about DLSS. What is wrong with my tongue when I say DLSS? It's like, I don't know, man. I wish they could just see it on these Ampere cards, man. I wish people got the chance to see it, man, because holy fuck, man. You can just basically run certain games at 4K 120 FPS rock solid with ray tracing. Like, it doesn't seem like it should be possible, but with the combination of the rasterization cores, the AI cores, and the ray tracing cores, all three of these components of Ampere as a GPU architecture working in tandem kind of opens the pathway for these games to be able to run at 4K 120 FPS, 144 FPS with ray tracing. And yeah, like, it's pretty much something that's only now being able to be done technologically in terms of gaming. For me as a gamer, this is why I invested into a 4K 120 hertz OLED TV. This is why I invested so much into my PC. I was looking forward to this. I was excited for this. This is what I want to get out of my gaming experience. I want to be able to play games on my sofa, whether it's with the controller, with the wireless keyboard and mouse I have, with the lap board and everything, and chill there on the sofa playing games 4K 120 FPS with ray tracing. That's what I signed up for. This is like bleeding edge technology now. I want to be right there. So I'm okay with what it costs to get an RTX 3090. That price makes sense to me. People will say, oh, there's a $500 difference, but it can basically do rasterization in terms of what they showed at the AMD conference, similarly to an RTX 3090. So why would you pay that extra 500 USD for an RTX 3090? And the answer is, for me, 4K 120 FPS with ray tracing. That's why DLSS makes 4K look so close to, like, it doesn't look like 1440p. I know what 1440p looks like. It looks better. I keep turning off the DLSS and then turning it on, and my eyes just can't tell the difference. But what I can tell the difference is that when the DLSS is on, the frame rate's way friggin' higher and it runs smooth. And that's why, holy fuck, now I love AI technology in terms of graphics, because I didn't realize this was what we were going to be able to get out of that. And when my eyes were open to that, now it's like I just wish everybody else could see that and could get as excited as I am about it. So all these YouTubers putting out videos about, oh, the RTX Ampere series is dead and all this, the RTX 3090 is buried, 3080 is buried, da da da, whatever they're saying, AMD is the savior. You know, my perspective is take in all the information, think about it, look at it thoroughly, understand what the benefits of Ampere are, understand what the benefits of AMD is. I think their smart access memory, that's a great idea, and I wish that Intel and Nvidia would do something more similar to that. If Nvidia or Intel is going to get into GPUs or CPU making, that should be a thing. And I don't know if Nvidia is all of a sudden going to try to compete with AMD and Intel in the CPU market. That would be sick. But something like smart access memory for GeForce cards would be sick. Again, we're going to have to see how this all pans out, but honestly speaking, I understand what I was getting myself into Ampere with, and I'm happy with that decision. And I just want to speak that perspective out of why someone would invest into an RTX 3090, why it matters to them, why it's, again, we don't know about AMD's ray tracing technology. They don't have the same kind of super sampling technology like Nvidia has. I don't know how many AI tensor cores they have in their GPU. Like, we don't really understand that side of it. So again, if the Radeon series works for you, if you're not really caring about high frame rate ray tracing gaming in 4K, okay, yeah, go for it. Get Radeon, man. I'm not going to tell you not to make the decision that makes the most sense for you. I'm just going to say, look at the different reasons why people want something and understand it's not stupid to get an RTX 3090 if you understand what you're paying for and why you're getting it, and then you're satisfied with the end result when you get it. That's not getting ripped off. That's getting exactly what you paid for. Like, I'm just like, man, I wish more people were able to buy these cards because I know how many people want to buy them. And that's the part that I think really sucks. And that's the only part I can really point the finger at Nvidia and say, hey, you fucked up, man. So anyways, one of my friends said, whoever's going to win this battle is whoever can get the GPUs on the shelves. And I gotta say, I partially agree with him. And yeah. Anyways, guys, that was my perspective on the whole AMD Radeon 6000 series reveal and how it compares to the Ampere lineup. And yeah, honestly, I feel like I made the right choice for myself. I did not see any real way for AMD to have better ray tracing technology or DLSS the same way that Nvidia does. And honestly, as somebody who was skeptical of DLSS at first, wow, one day the ray tracing technology will get good enough that we'll have 4K 120 FPS like natively just rendering like that without the need for AI super sampling and all that. But honestly, I'm beginning to think that the AI is going to become a part of the ray tracing equation just based on the level of performance boost that we're now seeing using DLSS 2.0. Again, the trifecta is like ray tracing cores, AI cores, and rasterization cores, all of them working in tandem, is when you can create 4K 120 FPS gaming with ray tracing. That's the new breakthrough. That's why the Ampere lineup is so exciting to me. I'm Mike Mohammed. Thanks for watching. And if you made it this far, leave a like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought down below. And I'll see you guys next time.